Okay, so I think we are going to start here. We've been waiting for a few more people to sign up, but I think everybody else is on time. And thank you all very much for joining us. This is our 10th webinar through the Farm Stay USA organization. This is going to be about food on the farm, cooking it, serving it, teaching it. And a little housekeeping. I know those of you that have been on this before have heard this, but if you have not been on one of these webinars, Zoom allows you to interact with us. Kate is on chat, but she's not. So I'm on chat, and because I'm talking, if you have any questions, I can't talk and type at the same time, so I will answer them after I'm done with my part. There's Q&A where you can ask questions at any time. We will answer them at the end of the presentation, but feel free to type your questions in at any time. All the microphones are muted other than mine and our presenter. So that just keeps things simple. There is a short survey at the end. I would love for you to fill it out. That's part of the grant feedback that I need to give. And this webinar will be posted on our website in the Farmer's Guide, hopefully no more than 24 hours after the presentation. A little bit about why we are putting these webinars on. I'm Scotty Jones. I'm the founder and executive director of the U.S. Farm Stay Association, lovingly called Farm Stay USA. But I also am the co-owner of Leaping Lamb Farm and Farm Stay here in Alsea, Oregon. I've been a farmer since 2003 and hosted a farm stay since 2006. So I am very interested in the topics that we are presenting and have thought that they would be of interest to you all as well, besides the fact that I interact with a lot of our farm stay hosts regularly. So I get to see what they're really good at, and I also get to see what they have questions about. Today we're going to hear from a farmer chef who fell into cooking and teaching partly because of his love for cooking. So Don Speranza is at the inn at Crippen Creek Farm in Ska-mock-away, Washington, and I only had to learn how to pronounce that a few times. He actually retired from the Portland Police Department 15 years ago and moved to the farm with his wife, Kitty. He and his wife had a small restaurant and catering business while they were in Portland, and are both passionate about hospitality. Don's skill is mainly in the kitchen, and his wife is the welcome wagon. She's also the chief gardener on the farm. They sell artisan breads. They used to sell them at the local farmers market, and now they have enough of a resource in customers that they sell direct to customers. And Don does offer cooking classes and dinner options to both guests and to locals at his farm. His, and I would say their mantra, is taking the time to savor a meal is one of the most important experiences you can share with others. So I'm going to welcome Don, and one of the things that I'm going to do is we're going to do this as a question and answer webinar, and I am going to share pictures of his farm and his everything that he does there in a rotating fashion. So we are going to start with that. So welcome, Don. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, give us some background about yourself, your farm stay.
Okay, well, thank you, Scotty, for hosting this. And welcome to all of you. Welcome to Ska-mock-away. You did a good job of pronouncing that. You gave a pretty good cap of our background, but you know, there was nothing in my background to ever thought I wanted to be a farmer or a chef. But I was a policeman. That was my vocation in life. Yet when I got out of the military and went back to school full time, turned out the hours were conducive to my being the one to get dinner ready. And lo and behold, it turned out I loved doing it. And to the point where I started reading cookbooks like they were novels. But went on and finished school and moved out to Portland, Oregon, where I became a policeman for the next 27 years. But 27 years of policing causes a little bit of burnout and a bleak look on humanity. And in order to gain some sanity, I spent a month living and working with Trappist monks, and on a big farm, as a matter of fact. And during that time of solitude and silence, I remember I heard a leaf drop to the ground the first time ever, and I was absolutely captivated by all of that. And thus began my own search for getting out of the city. I thought I was a dyed-in-the-wool urban boy, but 20, as I said, 27 years of police changed that. So my wife, being the supportive person that she is, she had plans that we were going to live maybe in retirement in downtown Portland and walk to shows and concerts, and and I had a different idea, but she supported me in our search for a country home. Kind of took John Prine's song there and blew up our TV. It threw away our paper, moved to the country and built us a home. And we've never looked back with any regrets. In terms of the cooking, was kind of interesting in that, my earliest memories of cooking was as a little kid, helping mom on Saturday nights roll out the meatballs for our traditional Sunday spaghetti and meatball dinner. Well, fast forward to 1973, after I was married, and as I said, I was taking care of the cooking for the two of us. And when I graduated from college and had a party, interestingly enough, every single gift everybody brought me was cooking related. So I guess something kind of stuck.
Okay.
Well, when we got out, yep, go ahead.
No. Go. Keep going. Sorry.
All right. So we move out here to Ska-mock-away. We've got this 15 acres that we're loving the beauty of it and everything. And I thought, well, I should have a little bit of some chickens, and I still had to make a living, even though I had a pension. But what I didn't have, excuse me, in retirement was any health care. And we all know what a hot button issue healthcare is today. So in order to maintain my healthcare, was taking 30% of my pension right off the top. So that meant, well, you still need to work. And the idea of going off to a job to try to secure healthcare and daydreaming about being here just wasn't going to work. So I said, well, what do we know? We had this experience in Portland where we ran a catering business, small restaurant. We'd entertained in our home for years. So let's do a bed and breakfast. And so we started out with that, got set up with the health department, and we were licensed to do a bed and breakfast, to do breakfast. However, my love for cooking, I actually really like cooking dinner a lot more than I like cooking breakfast. So we ventured into that, and that took a little bit of extra licensing. So we had to get licensed as a restaurant, even though we're not open, for the public just to walk in. But in order for us to be able to serve dinners to our guests, we had to have that extra licensing. Well, someone started a farm market here and invited us to come and sell our artisan breads there. So we took them up on it. We did that for several years, which was a great way to establish a reputation in the community. However, I have to say it was really grueling. We'd be up all night long, Thursday night, baking bread to sell on Friday afternoon. And by the time we got home on Friday evenings, we were just exhausted. And we were kind of wondering, it seemed like we were not really getting many bookings on a Friday. And I think the energy we were putting out is that it wasn't just there. So we left behind the selling at the farm market and decided, if you want this bread, how about how about if I teach you how to make the bread? And so we started, our first cooking class was on artisan bread baking. And from that grew interest in other classes. We teach Italian country cooking. Uh, I found that a lot of people are intimidated to put on a dinner party, and they find themselves overwhelmed with all the components of it and find it stressful. So I developed menus that broke down each course of a meal, everything from the antipasto to the dessert, and taught them things that they have a high impact in terms of flavor and having a wow factor for guests, but we're not necessarily really esoteric or took a lot of great skill to do. You don't have to go to a culinary school to learn to cook well. And most of our food tends to be, Italian because that's my heritage. But another reason I love it is the simplicity of it. If you start with good quality ingredients and you prepare it well, it's going to work for you.
So
in terms of, yeah, go ahead.
no. Keep going. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting.
No, it's fine. It's so our guests get involved with our cooking for the ones that want to be involved in a cooking class. In terms of the guests coming here, they don't have use of our kitchen or anything. That's my domain. I fix their breakfasts or meals. I'd say about 80% of our guests choose the option to have dinner. And besides my love for cooking dinner, the other reason we offer dinner as an option is because in our small town there is no fine dining. We're in a county of 4,000 people. There's not even a stoplight, and there's no fine dining restaurant. It's just your typical small town diner. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but very often when people are coming for a getaway, they're celebrating a birthday or anniversary. They want something a little bit more. So if they were staying here but wanted to go out for a fine dinner, they'd have to drive an hour away. So we decided we'll offer dinner. They don't have to worry about driving back in the dark and the rain. All they have to do is be able to get themselves up to their room after the meal. And that has turned out to be immensely popular. The downside of that is we're a very small place. We only have 2 guest rooms. And sometimes you only really have, one couple booked in on a weekend and they've ordered dinner. Well, there's a lot of time involved in preparing a dinner, even if it's, for just 2 people. For the effort, I could easily serve 6, 8, 10 people. So from that was born the idea called Room at the Table. And we would send out an email to the locals. We would post on Facebook, hey, we have room at the table. Here's what the menu is this weekend. Here's the price for it. If you'd like to join in, you can do that. And so that's worked out well. It's worked out well for our guests to meet some of the local people. It works out for our local people to meet our guests, and it makes for great energy. My wife and I have long held the belief that food is a building block for community. I mean, religions call it communion, not for nothing, So when people sit around a table, regardless of maybe the differences we may have politically, religiously, or any other nature, we all have to eat. And we can all say, wow, a shared meal, wasn't this a good thing? And from that, we might find out what other things we have in common. It really breaks down a lot of barriers. I've been privileged and amazed at the safety that people feel around a shared meal, to divulge much about their life, their joys, their pains, what have you. Um, and of course, I owe a lot of that to my wife, Kitty, has a really high beam smile and an infectious laughter. And when she meets our guests, seems like when they cross that threshold, um, it just seems like you're connecting with old friends. So that seems to set the stage the stage for it, and then we just let uh, the nature and beauty of our place and let the food work its magic on our guests.
That's fabulous. So I want to ask you a little bit about the food you guys produce on the farm. So is it everything you produce on the farm what you use as ingredients, or how does that work?
Uh, yeah, well, we have to source from a variety of ingredients. Uh, we raise chickens for eggs, we raise chickens for meat, we raise pigs for pork, and we raise beef. We attempted to raise sheep, but couldn't keep them alive. And we do garden, and we have a few things that we do well in our garden, but quite honestly, our gardening is our weakest link. It seems when all the other pressing matters of running this place come up, the garden is the thing that takes the back seat. And I suppose that's because then I rely on the other growers around the area for things that I need. And excuse me, and if they don't have it or we're out of season, then we still have to do a lot of shopping at Costco or cash and carry or local grocery store if necessary. So we try to be pure mostly if we can, but that quite honestly really isn't sustainable. I find that the our guests always inquire about that if we grew the food but it doesn't seem to be a critical nature for them. They do take a lot of stock in that the meat that we provide is meat that we've grown here, and they like the idea that it's been humanely and sustainably raised. Um, as far as the rest of it goes, they just care that the food has been cooked well and that they've had a good dining experience.
Cool. That's cool. So tell me a little bit about the actual regulatory part. So you have a commercial kitchen. So what does that mean? And do you need any special licensing? Does anyone come and check you? What does that look like from your end?
All right. So the regulations obviously they're going to vary from state to state and county to county. In Washington, if you have more than two rooms, you're running a bed and breakfast, you're really classified uh, as a technical inn and you're regulated by the state. We're only two rooms, so we're regulated by the county health department. Um, when we built our home, obviously we had to start with the health department for permitting for a septic tank. And since we told them we were going to do a bed and breakfast, that entered in it. So that was our first licensing, just to be able to serve breakfast. When I told them I wanted to do dinners, then we had to get licensing as a restaurant. And boy, that just jumped this year by $100. So we're paying $250 a year to be licensed as a bed and breakfast and as a restaurant. Now, there is yet another licensing. Let's say we wanted to produce value-added foods like jams and jellies or anything that you might be a product that you canned and you wanted to sell at the farm market, what have you. So we have chosen not to do that. I just don't need one more thing on my plate, but that is another possibility.
And so does somebody come in and check your place?
Yes, the local health inspector comes out twice a year. Um, he, he does come with notice because we're 10 miles out into the valley, so it would be futile for him to just drop in, and we may not even be here. Um, but he comes out, he goes through our refrigerators, our freezers, checking the temperature of them. Um, we review what the food handler safety laws are, make sure that we have an up-to-date food handler's card. And then we have to have our well water tested every year as well.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about these classes. What does a class look like? If I came and did Italian country cooking, that's showing up on the screen right there,
Great.
what do I get, and what does it cost me, and what do I go home with, or what does that look like?
Sure. So that costs slightly under $100. As a matter of fact, we have coming up one next week on it, where several people are coming out for it. So I'll go back to I was stating how people are so intimidated to put on a dinner party. So this will be like a 5-course meal. And in this particular class, we teach, we start with an appetizer, a very simple appetizer of it's called croccantini with marinated goat cheese and olives. So croccantini is simply a rosemary cracker bread. Well, this is so embarrassingly simple to make and yet so amazingly delicious that you won't ever want to go back to the store and just buy regular crackers. I mean, uh, so I get the students are hands-on in it. I give them the recipe. I have them look it over and say, here it is. Who would like to come up and you know try this? I'll demonstrate it for them if they need. And they come up and find out. They roll this out and they put it in the oven. And this amazing cracker bread is done in under 20 minutes. I said, wow, that was easy. I could do that. Then we'll move on to another part of the course, a salad. And so we provide them with the recipe. At this time of year, they'll come out. We'll go out to the hoop house. We'll pick the beans for the salad, what have you, and give them a recipe for the dressing that we use. There will be a pasta course that will teach them how to properly cook pasta and how to prepare a sauce to go with that. On this also on this very particular menu will involve pork that we've raised here. It's a dish called pork shoulder porchetta. And we take a pork shoulder roast and add our spices to it, slow cook it for several hours. And while all that's cooking, we'll prepare a dessert. And this particular dessert is panna cotta. Again, it's a super simple dessert that you put together in 15 minutes. And most of the time spent on it is the dessert sitting in the refrigerator setting up. So people are amazed that each component of the thing is nothing looks, I mean, when they look at it, maybe when they look at the menu, they're overwhelmed, but when they do it, oh, wow, I could do that. That was easy. And then everyone sits down together and enjoys the meal. We provide wine with the meal for it. And then if they have other people that are traveling with them, but they didn't want the class, then they could buy into the meal as well. And again, depending on how many people it is, we open it up to the public to come for it as well.
And so do you make money doing these? I mean, it sounds like takes a while to do a 5-course meal and then sit down and eat it. Is it, I mean, are you making $5 an hour? Or?
Yes. Yeah, do you make money on it? Well, if you say, okay, well, based on the cost of my ingredients, yes, I make money that way. Do I make money based on my time? I'm very underpaid for it.
Okay.
But so here's the struggle with that whole thing. We offer the dinners in the classes, particularly the dinners, because that might be part of the draw why people come here. So it ends up becoming a marketing thing.
Okay.
For the classes, for the time that I spend on the research and in the prep that I do ahead of time before the people come, yeah, that doesn't pencil out. If somebody who's really savvy business person would say that, Don, this is not a good business model, but it's not always about the money either. So I try to find this happy medium where, one, I'm doing this because I love to do it. I do it because I think it's important to reconnect people with food. I mean, all too often I meet these people, they have these beautiful homes and kitchens where the only thing made in them are reservations out to dinner. And I find that sad. Um,
Okay.
I just think that, so it's a bit of a mission for me to
Okay.
get people cooking.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah,
That's,
so
that's cool. Okay, so finally, I guess I want to make sure, what would I need to make sure I consider and know before I take up cooking breakfast for guests? That's the first question. I take up cooking other meals for guests. And then if I want to offer classes, what would be the main things I need to be sure I consider and know?
all right. Well, I would start with the idea is that you better love to cook
Okay.
because if you only see cooking as an absolute chore and your heart's not going to be in it, I just don't think it's going to play well.
Okay.
But so in terms of breakfast, you, I would say learn all you can about preparing eggs because that's going to be one of the most common dishes you do. Try out different recipes for breakfast breads, muffins, scones, cinnamon rolls, biscuits. Try a few of those. Those are not really difficult things. Find the ones you like. So get a few menus down that that you can do well and feel confident about. And the same thing when you get into doing for dinner. Again, this does not have to be fancy high cuisine. I really find that simple meals, whether, I mean, if it's a breakfast of biscuits and gravy, just don't do it from a mix. Do it from, do it from scratch. It's not that hard. If you're doing dinner, find the meals that your friends and guests compliment you on, and practice a few of those meals with your friends. You'll make them happy. You'll get confident in what you're doing, and your guests will absolutely love. And especially if at least some components of that meal come from your farm, that will make all the difference. Just when we all know what it's like to have a homegrown tomato, and and the freshness of this, and when you can tell them about that chicken that you raised or that beef. To back up a little point on the pricing about that, and imagine most of you out there, if you're farming, well that like raising a chicken is not the cheap thing that we have often considered it to. By the time you've raised the chicken, you've done the processing. It's it's a little bit more special than that. But your guests, part of your role then is to educate them about that, and so it's a chance for you to help establish that connection with food and farm.
And so then the cooking class, I mean, because if you only have a few people doing it, it probably makes it more expensive, so to speak. So you really like inviting your community, and you find that you get good response from the community to come in for cooking classes?
I do. I mean, it does vary. It happens. It'll have to depend on how the schedule. Because if it's a guest that's coming midweek that wants a cooking class, that maybe sometimes doesn't work out as well for drawing in the community, whereas weekends seem to do better. Um, we limit our classes to 6, okay?
Okay.
So I've shopped what's out there, and I see a lot of places who have the capability of putting on big classes. They have an economy of scale
Sure.
that they'll have 20, 30 people at $100 a pop. It's bringing in quite a bit of revenue. We have 6 people, at under, maybe, on a good day, 6 people, 100. And for all the prep work, yeah, it's still a lot. I mean, it is some revenue, but uh,
Okay.
it satisfies something in me, and and our guests love it.
Well, right. And you're sending guests home with recipes, and I've included a couple of your recipes here. You know what I'm going
Good,
to do?
yes.
I'm going to switch this page over to a different page because I think that here are some of the, like I got out of your talk when we were talking before about the 10 things to remember, you know, and so that people will have this kind of in writing for this webinar. But I think I got that, you know, you need a licensed kitchen. But you also, what I really got from you is that you need that passion and love for cooking. Otherwise, it's just a chore. I think that's really important. And there are just a few here that I had.
Yeah,
The food handler's card, you had mentioned that before. That's not that hard a test to take, right?
that's
Um,
right. Very
um,
simple.
Start by baking bread. I got that from you. And everybody loves bread, especially for breakfast, and they always ask you if you've made it yourself. So that's a good one. I like the repertoire for meals. Oh, the quality ingredients. You were mentioning before that if you're going to make anything, you should be using quality.
That
Go.
is, yes, absolutely. That's half the battle right there.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't talk about special dietary needs.
Ah, yes. Oh, no, my nemesis.
Yeah.
I like to have a blank slate when I cook for people, but anymore now, my gosh, you have to ask about special needs because somebody's gluten free or they're vegan or lactose intolerant, and uh, so
Yeah.
So, so
And
let's say we start with a couple who is booked in their dinner, and they're the ideal guest. They have absolutely no food issues, and they say, "Don, prepare anything you want. We're adventuresome eaters." Okay, great. Now, couple number 2 books in. They find out we have a dinner. Well, in that case, I tell them, okay, the menu. The first couple that books, they get to set the menu.
okay.
So here's what it is. If you've got some major issues in that, then perhaps you want to think about exploring one of our local options. If there's too many issues in there for you.
Sure. Okay. Because I know that that's
Yeah,
come up
yeah,
before for how do
right,
how do we all deal with dietary needs? But it sounds like
yeah.
you'll accommodate if you can, and if not,
We do, and I do find ways, even within a meal. Let's say we're doing an Italian meal with pasta. Say we have a vegan in the group. So a lot of pasta meals are actually naturally vegan. You can prepare the pasta with the sauce that maybe is using olive oil as the fat rather than an animal fat. You've got tomatoes in it. You've got some herbs in it. So what do? We leave out. So we prepare the pasta meal. Leave the cheese on the side. Maybe the other guest is omnivorous, and so I have some of our homemade Italian sausage. The vegan is free to take all the pasta minus the animal products, and everybody, that one works out really well.
sure. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Um, so okay, let's see here. I'm thinking. I'm going to say thank you. First of all, thank you. For that was really informative. But I also want to see if there's anybody who has any questions that they would like to ask you. And I don't see any right here. So I'm going to wait for people to figure out how to ask those questions, although I guess I should go to chat because sometimes people put them there. But while I am checking on that, can you tell me a little bit about that pizza oven that I saw?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. So there's a fellow who lives a couple of hours from here out in the country, and he is a super high energy guy who started out making commercial espresso machines. Then he started developing pizza ovens. And I came across him online. I loved the idea. It was portable, it was stainless steel, set out in the weather. I always wanted to have an outdoor pizza oven, but I didn't have the skills or really the desire to build one. And then all too often, I found that when people did do that, they would set it up and, oh my gosh, that was a bad location. Now what do I do? Well, I thought this guy had this thing. It's got a stand. It's got the oven on it. It all fits in a box. It fit in the back of my Highlander. We drove it home and got a couple friends to put it up. Now, his first iteration of a pizza oven was $2,000. And a couple of years later, he comes back to me and said, "Hey, Don, I've got a new one and I've only got one left of this. And it's $4,000, but I'll sell it to you for 2,000, the same as
Wow.
you paid it because it's my last one, right?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I still got this one." And somehow life is funny how it works out. Some friend that I hadn't seen for a while came by and wanted to buy my first pizza oven, paid me what I paid for it. All right, so I turned around to this guy and bought his new pizza oven, which has worked out great.
And so
But
do
he
you,
never really ended. He's still building pizza ovens.
okay. And so do you find that your
Yeah.
guests want to do individual pizzas a lot for dinner?
So when we have people that want to have pizza, I will only do the wood-fired pizza oven if I got to have a minimum of 6 people and preferably 8 to 10 because this thing takes 2.5 hours to heat it up.
Ah,
And then you have to continue managing the fire with a lot of firewood. And then so when you're preparing each pizza to go into the wood fired oven and everything, that is a lot more work than, let's say, I'm using large pizza pans and doing them in the oven in the house.
got it. Okay.
So we have 2 ways that we go on that. This is a really, really fun and an exciting thing, yes, but quite honestly, it's really got to work out when I have enough people to buy in on it. Otherwise, I simply do it when we're personally entertaining family and friends.
Okay. So I see a
Yeah.
question here. So Scott is asking, what's the maximum amount of people you allow at dinner?
Well, we could. Well, at our table, we could squeeze 12 in. And if we were doing a special dinner, we could set up another table. We have actually, uh, we've done a couple of rehearsal dinners in here for 35 to 40 people. We have a
Wow.
big, great room and we have to set up. We, for several years, we were hosting elder hostel guests. There was a group, so we have a fellow in the area. He leads these elder hostel groups on kayaking, and we and another bed and breakfast would house these people. But for out of the 5 nights they were here, 3 nights they came to our place for dinner. And that was 20 people
Wow.
that we provided
Wow.
dinner for. Yeah.
And so then Scott also wanted to know, he said, I love this room at the table idea. How do you advertise that?
Um, One, we have a list of people in the area that are interested. And so we have an email that goes out to them. And then the other way is to simply post it on Facebook.
Ah, okay,
I have a personal page
okay. Uh-oh, are you still there? Oh no, I think we might have lost him. This is the problem.
and then I have that's the way we advertise it.
Okay. Um, and so I have a question. I realized when you have people come for dinner, do you sit down with them for dinner?
Most of the time, yes. I find that we've become part of the package with our guests. Our guests get here, and yeah, and I'm sure probably everybody out there has experienced. Everybody's got a story to tell, and people they want to tell their story, but people are interested in, well, how did you do this? People are curious. You were a policeman, and now you do this, or gosh, I thought about maybe moving to the country sometime. It's so sweet having all this creek run through and everything. And so people want to know about that. How could I do this in retirement? Yeah.
Okay,
So people do, yeah, they want us. We simply can't eat every meal with all the guests. I mean, these
sure,
people are on vacation. I can't. So when it's dinner, we'll sit down to dinner with them. But then usually the next morning, uh, you
sure.
know, while they're having it, I'll just sit down and have a cup of coffee with them or what have
Right.
you, because, yeah.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. So, okay, if anyone else has any questions, you need to ask those questions now. Otherwise, I'm going to let Don go back to taking care of his guests and getting his meals prepared and cooking his bread
And,
and, and firing.
and yeah, if people do have questions they think of later, they have my email there.
Yeah. Okay.
Feel free to send me. I'll be glad to take the time to answer your questions on it if it's, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate you taking the time, Don, to talk with us. And I'm just going to end this here for everybody. We do have some future webinar dates and topics coming up. September 12th, it's going to be Kim Goodling from Vermont, Grandview Farm. October 3rd, I've got Gianna Cleese Caldwell. She's here in Oregon. She actually is nationally recognized for cheese production. So she'll talk about her goats and her cheese and how she involves her guests. I don't know about the 17th and 31st. You can see these topics down below. I need to ask some of our farmers if they would be willing to talk about those. And then I think in November, tours and events, Ruth Pepler, she's in Arkansas. She does this a lot. And so I think those will be other good topics. But other than that, I guess I'm going to just say goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Don. And we will see you all on September 12th. So thank you very much.
thank you, Scotty.
Okay,
Bye
bye.
bye.